Hey everyone, welcome to the channel and welcome to another speed controller review. And this time around, it's not actually a Hobbywing. This speed controller comes from Orca. It is their 800 series version 2 brushed speed controller. It's a little bit of a mystery. Orca themselves don't even have any information on their own website about it, which means we may as well just crack it open and see what you get in the box. Okay, so first of all, a little bit of a foam there with the Orca name embossed on it. Quite a fancy bit of packaging for a fairly inexpensive speed controller. These are less than £45 in the UK. Also included is a programmer. I think I might just tip this out of the whole box, in fact. Okay, programmer is included. We'll just remove the foam here to get to it. So the programmer in layout looks quite similar to the basic Hobbywing programmer, but I can tell you it's quite a lot smaller, half to 2/3 of the size. Here on the side of the box is the actual speed controller peeping through there. Just slide it out of the bottom of the cardboard so we can see the important bits. A bundle of wires here in various different colours. Just remove this elastic band, and a decent length to those wires should hopefully help with a clean installation. But one thing that's particularly appealing to me about this speed controller is that it only has one receiver wire coming out of it. Now, if you've seen some of my other recent reviews of Hobbywing speed controllers, they've started to get into the habit of adding extra wires to go to the receiver to control extra functionality, such as drag brake rate. This is a bit of a back to basics speed controller, it seems. And the reason I want something nice and simple is because this is going to go into a Tamiya Mini. So I want something straightforward for brushed class racing. In terms of the construction, as you can probably tell from the shine, this has an aluminium case. The base is also aluminium, and it then has kind of a coated top here. I think it may well just be potted in order to have that finish. And then the switch is not a separate switch. It's one of those push buttons that's kind of beneath a membrane. And I'm sure plenty of you have had the experience of this kind of switch kind of wearing through after a couple of years use. So we'll see how durable that is in practice. Also an LED to the side there and a capacitor. As you'd expect with a brush speed controller, your two wires here to go out to the motor, yellow being positive, and your two wires going out to the controller. Comes pre-fitted with an XT60. I'll probably switch this across to a 5mm bullet because that's what I'm running in my Mini currently. Size-wise, quite compact. Certainly no larger than the equivalent Hobbywing, ever so slightly smaller I think, but I'll do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison on that. We'll put this to one side and see what else we get in the box. Printed manual here, which is important because I'm not sure this is anywhere online. So I'll go through this, and as usual on my speed controller videos, I shall do a quick run through of the programming process and the various different settings. 15 different settings here, I can tell from a quick run through of the instructions. And also I think I spotted in there a couple of stickers for those of us that like to attach stickers to our cars. Maybe some of us are even sponsored to run these things. I'm not. So these may well stay in the box for me, but nice to have these kind of accessories included. Okay, so that's what you get in the box. Next job is to get this thing installed in a car and set up. And I just so happen to have the version 1 of the Hobbywing 1080 right here, so to compare it directly to the Orca 800, just putting them back to back. Really nothing to separate the two of them in terms of footprint, and in terms of height the Orca is somewhat lower because it heat sinks through the base here, whereas the Hobbywing has this slightly larger heat sink that comes off the top of the speed controller. And obviously the Hobbywing It does have this external program port here for the programmer, and it also has a proper switch dangling away on a cable here. So we've got this one all wired up now, fairly straightforward as you would expect. And I'll try very hard to make sure I get this right because it has quite an interesting feature related to the initial setup. When you get this one out of the box, it has automatic calibration, which means that when you turn it on, it will automatically sense or expect what your transmitter will do for full throttle and full brake, and you won't need to go through a calibration process. So I'll just give you an example of that. I haven't actually tried the correct calibration of endpoints. I'll just power the speed controller up, and I'm actually going to use the end of a pen to press the button because it's quite difficult to do with just your finger. So that's powered up in the default mode, which is automatic calibration. So here's the transmitter. For what it's worth, I've reversed the throttle servo reverse because this is a Futaba. And now if I just go full throttle, it's automatically calibrated. And you can see from the LED, that's partial throttle, that's full throttle. By default, it's in a mode that's suitable for crawlers, so there's maximum drag brake. But if I push back, you can see that the reverse is also automatically calibrated to full reverse. So that's the option for automatic calibration if you don't do anything. However, Orca do give you the option to go for a manual calibration, which is what I would prefer for a racing chassis. So I'm going to go through that now. However, what they say is once you've done the manual calibration, you can't go back to the automatic calibration. From then on, the speed controller is going to have to be manually calibrated. It's a one-time thing. So to go through this manual calibration, what you start off by doing is selecting full brake on your transmitter, and then you power up the speed controller. That double beep says it's in the manual calibration mode. What I do next is I go to full throttle and wait for those two beeps again. Okay, so now it has detected full throttle. The final step is just to go to neutral and again wait for a beep. Okay, so that's the speed controller in theory successfully manually calibrated. I will just now see if this actually works. Bit of forward throttle being applied. Yep. And a bit of reverse. Yeah. So that's working, but it's also working quite slowly. This may be because of some of the settings on the speed controller. I think I'm going to have to go through and do a double check, and I will let you know later on in the video why these beeps are not solid lights. Okay, well, it didn't take me long to get the answer about the LED, why it was flashing and not solid. I turned it off and turned it back on again, and voila, the LED does what it expects. So we just go to full throttle, and that's pretty fast, and full reverse. Not so fast, but that's because of the speed controller settings, but the LED is doing what we'd expect. So now that I've got it calibrated, we can do the correct settings on the program card. It's not plugged in, as you can see. It will need to be plugged in to the receiver cable now. Because the receiver cable is quite short because of where it's being routed, it's going to be a bit fiddly to plug it in. Perhaps I'll get an extension at a later date to make it a bit easier. But a good news about the program card is that on the back, it does have a list of all of the possible settings. But what I'll do first of all is I'll just run through these 15 different settings and just give a quick overview of what they would be expected to do. And there's a couple of things on here that are a bit different to the Hobbywings and might be of interest to people as well. So all plugged in with the program box. As you can see, it's marked here, the signal, the white wire to the left. When you plug it into the top, it's just about hanging over the side of the chassis, so we should be okay. Sharpie marker to hand. Let's power this one back up again. Okay, looks like it just reviews the existing settings while it boots up. And it looks like now we are in the programming mode. So this comes out of the box with settings that I think are probably best suited to a crawler. And as you can probably tell, this is a Tamiya Mini that is set up for racing. It's using, by the way, a 27-turn Core RC motor because that's the rule at the local track. So I want to change this running mode, which is the first item, to forward and brake. Forward only with brakes, which is the usual mode for racing. So we have two arrows here, which should allow us to toggle through the values on this. So I should just cycle through them. Okay, it just needs a little bit of a slow press to make sure it goes through. The forward brake mode is value 2 here, and I'll just press the enter button once, and that says send. And another interesting feature of this programmer compared to the Hobbywings is you actually need to press enter twice to get it to store it in the speed controller. So I'll press it the second time and we get success. That is now done. I'll press the select button again. By the way, on the video it may look like these are flashing. They're not. That's probably just the way that the video camera is picking up the lights on the LED programmer. So I press the select button. So that was item 1, now set to value 2. That's fine. Programming item 2 is the battery type, which I'll leave at LiPo. Item 3 is the cutoff voltage. Setting 2 is the medium setting, which is 3.2 volts, and per cell I'll leave that as well. I'm happy with that for LiPo. Setting 4 is the punch level, which goes from 1 to 5. Because I'm running a very slow brush motor, I may as well max it out. Even with a front-wheel drive Tamiya Mini, there's no shortage of traction realistically for the 27-ton motor. So again, just up to value 5, enter to send, enter to make success. Fine. Again, have to go back all the way through. Number 5 is the PWM, so that is the frequency that the speed controller operates at. Lower values are punchier, higher values are smoother. This is set by default to value 3, which is 8,000. I'm actually going to change that down to value 1, which is 1,000, which again is the punchiest, which I think will be best suited to a slow brushed motor. So again, send and success. I won't do any more programming because it's quite time consuming to watch. So I'll just run through the settings and rest assured I'll be doing the programming myself separately later on. Item 6 is a throttle compress, and that is a very interesting feature which I've not seen on any other speed controllers. What this does is it takes some percentage off the travel. So let's imagine on the transmitter you have got 100% travel, obviously, on your throttle trigger, and at 100% you would get full throttle. What this does is it means it reduces the amount of the travel before you get full throttle. So out of the box it's set to value 6, which is 30%. That means that you hit full throttle on the speed controller having only used 70% of the travel on your transmitter. Effectively, it's going to make the car feel punchier and more aggressive. Now, I'm not sure I generally like that kind of feeling. I personally like to have the full throttle travel and just try and move my fingers more quickly if I want more punch. So it's something I'll probably have a little experiment with, and I'm probably going to start off with no compression on the throttle and just have the full travel, because it means that you get a smoother mid-range, which is a bit easier to drive in the infield, even with a small motor like that one. Value item 7 is the starting force, and that relates to when you first apply the throttle, how much motor power is applied. It's at the lowest value, which is 1%, but you can also set it up to 7 different levels, the highest being 18%, which means that the first time you squeeze the trigger, you get 18% of the full throttle as well. Again, that's something that will give you a more aggressive feeling down low on the motor. 8 is the maximum forward force. Value 4 is 100%. The lower values if you want to restrict the speed going forward. Item 9 is the same on reverse, set to value 2, which is 50% value for reverse, again up to value 4, which would be 100% for the reverse. I like 50% when I'm using reverse, which I won't be doing as this is a racing car. Item 10 is the maximum braking force. Value 8 is 100%, but you have several steps less than that you can use. Again, it's something you can adjust on the speed controller if you are finding that the brakes are locking up a bit too easily. Makes it a bit smoother into corners. Personally speaking, I tend to play around with the transmitter. On a Futaba, they call it 80L, travel limiter on the brake side. That's what I tend to use to reduce the brake force rather than using a speed controller setting. So I'll keep the speed controller set to 100% on the brakes. Item 11 is the brake punch. So again, that's the aggressiveness of how the brakes come in. It's set to 4 out of level 6, level 6 being the most aggressive and the lower settings being softer in the feel of the braking. Item 12 is the drag brake, which is the amount of braking you have at neutral. Because out of the box, this is set up for a crawler. It's at value 8, which is 100% drag brake at neutral. You absolutely don't want that value in a racing car. You might be running maybe 10, maximum 20% drag brake in a racing car, which is values of around 1, 2, or 3 on this one. I'll be setting this down to 0 drag brake because, again, with a slow motor in a car like this, carrying corner speed is quite important. You don't really want to have any additional braking going through the motor. If you're running a very fast motor, modified racing, you might want to have a little drag brake just to give a bit more control and feeling as you go into the corners. Number 13 is the initial brake force. Again, the same as the initial throttle force. It's how much power you have on the braking when you first apply them. It's set to value 1, which is 0%, but it can go up to 35%, which is the 8th value. Number 14 is the neutral range, which is just the gap around neutral before it starts to apply any kind of signal, and this is 45 microseconds by default, which I think is a tiny bit smaller than the average Hobbywing. I'll give it a go. As I say, with these neutral ranges, it's really one of those things where if you've got a lower quality radio and it's not really staying still at neutral, it's trying to move, use a bigger neutral range just to stop that from happening. And setting 15, which is the last on this speed controller, is for the BEC voltage, the voltage that goes out of the speed controller to the servo. 6 volts is the default, value 1. It also has an option right up to 8.4 volts at value 2, which is quite a big step. And as ever, if you do want to use that higher BEC value, do make sure that your servo is suitable for it, because you don't want to burn the servo out by changing that setting and getting things wrong. So broadly speaking, that's how the programming on this speed controller works. Next job is to get it on the track and see how the car drives. So first impressions of the Orca 800 speed controller, now that the tyres have got up to temperature a little bit. Good smooth control, nice and responsive, no concerns that the settings are wrong. So after putting the Orca 800 version 2 speed controller through its paces, what do I think? Well, there's a lot to like. It's compact and it's got lots and lots of tuning options. For brushed motor racing, it's performed very, very well, punchy and also precise, exactly what I was expecting to get from it. And I'll share the settings that I put onto it in the description below. I'm sure it also performed very well for crawling using some different settings. There's only two things I'd mention. The first is the switch on the top of the speed controller, which is not that easy to access and still needs quite a lot of pushing to actually activate because it's soft. The second is that because you need to detach the plug from the receiver to attach the programmer, it may not work well in every installation. But overall, this one will become my new first choice for racing with brushed motors, meaning that the Hobbywing 1080 goes into second place. Mostly because the Orca just doesn't have those extra cables coming out of it and the extra separate switch. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you've got any questions or comments, then please do leave them below and I'll try my best to answer. If you've enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you clicked on the like button. And if you like what we're doing here on the channel in general, please do consider subscribing. As ever, thank you very much for watching.